You see my generation engaging in political talk online.
Yes.
What do you wish we would stop doing?
I mean, it's really different. Like when I look at, because I guess the older generation engages in this kind of issues on Facebook mostly, and I don't think there's a word limit on Facebook.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it's very long text usually, and I think maybe it applies to young people also, to be fair, but I see a lot of older people when they talk about politics. Some of them do engage based on which political party they support, or which like whether they're conservative or liberal. Then they just hunker down on that stance, and whichever issue or whichever policy comes up, they immediately go towards whatever stance that is, instead of like really engaging on the policy itself or the issue itself. I don't think it's fair to generalize across the whole generation, but that's what I see a lot on Facebook. And I think when talking about certain policies also, maybe it's also the vocabulary issue. I think because young people, we've had the benefit of social media, and precisely because we've been able to connect with people from all over the world, there's a lot more access to the vocabulary that you would use when you talk about politics. Like I don't know, I don't want to say the proper vocabulary, but I think there's a more productive and meaningful way to talk about policies, and young people have more access to those vocabulary. So that has helped us talk about politics, I think, on a more meaningful level, to talk really about the issue. Whereas the older people may not have that vocabulary.
Yeah, let's talk about the vocab thing. Public debate has been around, like, are our young people getting too woke, too like concerned with adopting vocabulary that doesn't belong to our culture? And I guess specific to I guess the struggles of the Singapore or Asian scene is like vocabulary like woke, allyship, progressive politics. It can be perceived as American vocabulary imported into like Asian shores, right? And I am wondering, like, has that helped you, or has that helped your causes or hindered your causes when you all use those terms? And do you even use those terms? Yeah, to describe yourself. Because I've definitely seen that label put on you, but like how do those labels sit for you?
I'm actually in favor of using those terms and those labels, because to me, I see most of these terms being imported as more of analytical tools for us to view a certain issue. So for instance, like intersectionality, that is a term coined by an American. And there have been people, because we did do a post on intersectionality, intersectional feminism, and there were people from our own community. First of all, there was that whole, why do you need feminism? Because even feminism to them is a Western concept. They're like, in our religion, there's already this concept of gender equality, so just call it that. Just call it a religion thing. It's not a feminism thing. So there was that level of disagreement. And then there was also the whole, why use the term intersectionality? Like, we don't need that term. We know that, gender, race, class, these are all factors. And my issue with that is it's really just an analytical tool. So we understand that when you use that analytical tool, it just gives you a lens to look at the issue in a multifactorial way. But then you contextualize it to Singapore and to our issues. So I don't see it as a problem. And I think why people get upset with it is they see these like terms, these concepts as like substantive issues that we are importing from America, rather than like as just a lens. So maybe it's because of that misconception there. So I get why people are upset, but to me, it's not really a big deal. Yeah.
I think in my opinion, vocabulary is like, it's part of language. And I think people are just trying to understand themselves, understand the world around them. So vocabulary helps for them in a way to kind of acknowledge that certain things are reality, because sometimes you experience things and then you don't really know if what you're feeling is correct.
Yeah.
If there's some kind of tension and like you're like, is this really real? But then when you realize that there's a word for it, like let's say when you someone learns about microaggressions for the first time and they're like, oh, okay, so there is a name for it. It is real. What I'm feeling is valid. I think like language and vocabulary helps to empower people to recognize like their own emotions, their own experiences.
Okay, so I think this would be a really good time, right, to like sort of unpack some of this vocabulary, because I'm trying to imagine now for a listener who's like hearing like intersectionality and microaggressions and like allyship and all that and getting like it's like so like overwhelming and I'm getting very triggered by this. So I want to like slow this down and let's just try and like translate those terms, right? So that it can land for someone who may be triggered by this, right? So let's work with, well, it's like it's like playing like roulette, right? Okay, so since you brought up intersectionality, right? So in your own words, let's say trying to explain this to like your mother, or your grandmother, right? What does intersectionality mean?
Yeah, so intersectionality is this concept or tool to look at a problem and analyze it based on different parts of your identity and how that may worsen a problem for you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the easiest way to explain it. And then I guess to give an example, if I was speaking to my grandmother, I would then say to her, you are a woman, so perhaps that makes it harder for you to attain a certain level of education when you were younger compared to your male siblings. And then because you are a Malay speaking person, at the time there were less jobs available for you. So you are disadvantaged at another level because of your race. And because you came from a very poor family, that also limited your opportunities. So there are these intersections, these parts of your identities that overlap, that perhaps cause your problems to be worse. I want to say worse, or you're put at a greater disadvantage compared to your neighbor who was perhaps from a more affluent family, who was maybe male, maybe from an English-speaking family. Yeah.
Okay. Let's go with like the other like hot word, which is woke, which is now used like as both insult and compliment, right? Yeah, but so we definitely know that is very triggery in Singapore, right? And if you could translate that into something that people understand, right? What would that term be?
I think it just means being socially aware.
Okay.
Yeah, like that's really it. I don't see anything more to being woke except like knowing what's going on in the world. And I think it's really important for everyone to be socially aware.
Okay.
Yeah. It just has a positive connotation because it's good that you know things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I noticed on your Instagram page, you also make it quite explicit that you want to build allies, right? Allyship.
Yeah.
Allyship is very important to you, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And what does it mean to be an ally? And do I have to be liberal to be an ally?
No, I think to us, in the first place, we wanted to emphasize on allyship because we realized that when talking about certain issues, regardless what issue, whether it's like race or when you talk about people with disabilities, when you talk about gender, the group that comes from the more like advantaged position, their voices hold more weight. And so we need them to be allies to be able to help amplify the voices of those who are facing whatever problem it is. So being allies, I guess the simplest way to look at it is just being there to help someone who's facing a problem or an issue in some way. And being an ally can be as simple as just being there for your friend who has had an encounter with a very misogynistic person or with a very racist person, and you just lend a listening ear and you validate your friends' emotions. That's also one way of being an ally. And then if you have the ability or in a place where you are able to speak out about it and actually lend your voice to the cause publicly, that's also considered being an ally. So I think it doesn't have to be something very difficult or something that's super aspirational. It's really as simple as listening. I think that's the most basic thing about being an ally, listening and then learning to empathize and understand.
Then why use those words? Why is it still important to use words like woke and ally and intersectionality? Why is that important for either you personally or for your peers, your generation?
I guess just on a practical note, it's easier to have a word.
Okay.
And I think if we go back to like Anna's point on like microaggressions, for example, that's a word that really, it's not just something that defines the experience. It validates your experience also, because it then makes you feel that you are not alone. You get to share that experience with someone else and recognize that you are not alone. You know, so and that's perhaps something that you may not really see with the like terms like woke and allyship, because it's really more descriptive in that sense. But for terms like microaggression, for terms like privilege,
Right.
that's definitely something that validates your emotions and experiences. So it is still important to use those terms and have those words to be able to describe your experience in some way. Yeah.
What I think about this is, it helps that it's a language that it's not only understood, here in Singapore, but regionally or worldwide. I think it's really important to kind of have that common thread with cultures and communities all around the world, to kind of see we are all kind of going through similar things. We all have similar issues, and that's, a way for us to learn from one another. I think
Right.
to identify with one another. Yeah.
What has been your experience of using this vocabulary here? Does it help to integrate you or help to differentiate you?
I would say here, I feel it feels more like a differentiation. But globally, I feel like I belong to the global societies more. I think it just stems from Singapore having a very short history. We're still a very young nation. So I think people see things as alien, or they try to put labels and say that's not us, this is us. It's just trying to claim our identity, I would feel. And when you say that something is imported, then it seems like something foreign. But I think it's very important to welcome everything as something that can be integrated into our society, because that's how Singapore was built anyway. People come from a lot of different places and we learn from one another. That's why we thrive as a society. Yeah.
And I guess for me, working with that tension, knowing that it does separate us a little bit, there's also an awareness that we do have our people here. There's still a community of people who embrace these terms, who share in these experiences. And we connect with those people to keep ourselves feeling alive and feeling that, there's still some meaning to the work that we're doing to these experiences. Yeah.